welcome me back to the show, everybody. Thank you for having me. Up next is our lovely friend Shaun Cunningham from Front Step Forge out of Edmonton, Alberta. Shaun has been a artistic blacksmith for many years now. I believe he started, what was it, in the early 90s or was it 80s? I can't remember. Shaun will have to clarify that for you. But he's been doing this for a while now, and he's a excellent tool maker as well. If you're ever in need of a good hammer, tongs, punch, whatever you need, Front Step Forge is an excellent supplier of blacksmithing tools. Some of the highest quality that you can get in Canada, as far as I'm concerned. I highly recommend him for all your blacksmithing tool needs. I've used Shaun Cunningham's tools myself for quite some time now, and I'm very pleased with them. As many other people will attest, I know Yon Bardell uses Shaun Cunningham rounding hammer that he is absolutely in love with. And there's been a few other people that I've known that have Front Step Forge hammers as well that are very happy with them. Well, with all that said, I think there's not much else I can say about Shaun other than let's give a hand to Shaun Cunningham while he's presenting to us from NAIT, Northern Alberta Institute of Technology in Edmonton, Alberta. Give it up for Shaun Cunningham, everybody.
All right. So I've asked Shaun to unmute and share video.
I think I'm unmuted, but I can't quite tell yet. This is my first time using it. Okay. Start video. There we go.
Hey.
So, how's everyone there? Thanks for the great introduction. My head is swollen. So, I was kind of curious how this was going to go, so I prepared a little demo in the background, and I got some of my students who are much more technically savvy than me who can, they can move the camera. How's everyone out there doing?
Good. We had an awesome morning. We had Niels Vandenberg from Africa, South Africa.
I really wanted to see him, boy.
You know, we're recording this, so you'll be able to watch it later. And we had Julian from France. He was a Forge and Fire contestant. Max Sarin from I'd imagine you might know his name from Saskatchewan.
CWB.
It's just a stellar lineup, and it would have been the perfect weekend to not be teaching, but man, this is a great group I got here. Everyone's working their butts off.
Awesome. Now we're here to see what's going on at NAIT.
So I think I can move this stuff around here, but we're getting to use the Boilermakers Lab. This is a 50,000 square foot facility. It's got two big cranes that run down the length that I'm not actually allowed to use, but occasionally I have to move heavy stuff in and out of my truck. And what I've set up is a 30-foot long corridor for the 8 students. So the forges are all about 12 feet apart.
Awesome.
And those are my forges. And over in the background here are Lauren Baker's forges. They're natural gas ones that are permanently installed here.
Wow.
So we're really lucky. We get a couple of really interesting setups. Prior to COVID, we got Taro Asano from Japan to come in, and he actually built our Japanese charcoal forge. So in the back corner, let's see, behind me there is the Japanese coal forge and the new hood system they installed so we can use it indoors. And our little 33-pound Anyang in the background. This was always my normal area that I used for my forging classes. It's a 2,000 square foot little adjunct in the back of the building. But since then, since this era, we've switched to using the full length of the building.
Very good.
Hopefully that's not too motion sickness inducing.
No.
This weekend we're doing Blacksmithing 101. So I've got them building tongs and their punch. Last night we started with the standard square rectangular round. So they made the gauge that they're going to use to check the diameter of the punches, punched holes in the tongs. And just before they broke for lunch here a few minutes ago, they all forged their W1 punch that we're going to do our heat treatment on after we have it in the annealing bucket for a few hours.
Nice. When you're annealing that W1, do you load it with other steel to keep some thermal mass with it, or do you just leave it by itself?
So we have a fairly densely packed vermiculite tank here,
Okay.
and that's all the punches in it there.
Oh wow.
I would fully submerge them and leave them, and they'd still be warm in the morning if we had another 24 hours for the workshop. But we leave the end protruding, so we get a decent amount of relaxation of the poor strain that we put into those things a few minutes ago.
Yeah. Cool. And how often do you have students come in for the Blacksmithing 101? Is it a ongoing thing, or is it a monthly?
I teach once a month here.
Okay.
And currently we have no one else in the building until January. Normally this is full of people. There are 18 instructors here until the combination of budget cuts and COVID. Now there's one.
Wow.
It's stunning.
Yeah.
But luckily we could run classes anytime we wanted, but we're giving it a full 30 days in between every time to allow anything in here to expire.
Crazy. Nice. So we're getting people commenting saying how they're big fans of your work and your hammers. So that's nice to see.
That's really cool. One of my students really surprised me. His wife ordered a hammer for him, but her name's different, so I didn't know who he was. And he walks in with one of my hammers in class. So that was kind of a cool thing to see. I get to, yeah.
Hey, am I still unmuted here?
Yeah.
How many hammers do you figure you've made by now, Shaun?
I'm at 3,200.
Wow.
Wow.
Last year it was 1,100 pairs of tongs.
In 1 year.
Yeah. Those are the everyday ones that I try and do as much as possible on the power hammer, as well as the heritage ones where it's the exact same way I'm teaching it today.
How many different courses do you teach at NAIT?
I've got 5, but I only run 3 different ones in a year. So the next different one that isn't in this series will be axes, hatchets, and tomahawks that goes in April.
Nice.
Yeah, that's a lot of fun to teach because everyone in there is super dedicated. They usually visit me at the shop months ahead of time, and I give them chunks of steel to work on. So a little bit of homework before the class.
Cool. What does, if you don't mind me asking, what does a class cost to take with you? What's an average cost?
What was the cost of the class?
Yeah.
$650, $675.
Okay.
That's the standard cost at NAIT. That isn't is specific to blacksmithing. Any weekend workshop's going to be similar to that here.
And that's that starts on a Friday evening and goes over a Saturday and Sunday as well, or how does that work?
Yeah, we have 18 hours. It's from 6 to 10 on Friday night and Saturday, Sunday. Normally we kind of sneak a bit in at lunch today, but they were gracious enough to stand by while we're chatting.
Nice.
Yeah, thank you so much, you guys. Our greatest appreciation for that, for sure. So you're teaching tongs right now. You've got the W1 punch made. What was the starting stock for the W1 punch? Was it a round bar of a certain size, or?
Yeah, I was just explaining to them that 9 inches of 9/16. And the reason I use 9/16 is there's nothing else in my shop that's 9/16. So anytime I need to know what tool steel this is, I can just grab the vernier and check it.
That's very smart.
I keep it segregated. Well, I've thwarted that before, but I do my best. Yeah, part of what I really like about teaching the punch workshop, it isn't just a simple tapered punch. We're actually calculating our taper that goes onto the punch in order to arrive at a parallel size hole through the 3/8 that is the tongs. So Is there one of my sample tongs around? That'll do. Thank you. So when we're done punching our tongs, we won't have any slop in the rivet by the fact that the punch we made only sinks to the depth of 3/8, and the taper we made on it has virtually no taper through that 3/8 portion.
Interesting.
So that's part of our tool design, and it just starts to inform how they're thinking about what deformation occurs, or which I stole from Frank Turley, how much punch suck there is. So whether or not you're getting a depression like this inside from the incorrect shape versus a nice clean hole, well, a cleaner hole from the correct shape.
Right. What is your starting stock for tongs generally?
So I've changed that over many years. Now we're starting with 3/4 inch square bar. It's been MIG welded onto the handle, but we do a demonstration with forge welding it onto the handle too. With 18 hours of class, we were spending way too much time forge welding. And the conclusion of all the students was forge welding's awful. Well, it's pretty easy with some experience, so I decided that it was much more valuable that we learned all the different offsets, all the different half-faced hammer blows, and we got them functional tongs right away.
Yeah.
We have lots of opportunities to experiment with some of the other things, and as the class diverges throughout the day, they have the 3/8 bar that we worked on last night, and I'm encouraging them to forge weld a loop back on it. So without that accompanying positioning step, there's really a lot more success with forge welding the first go, and they get the sensation of when it sticks and when it doesn't, and it really leads to a better experience throughout the weekend.
Nice. Smart. I took a tong class with Matt Jenkins at Cloverdale Forge, and he as well uses the 3/4 inch square stock as a starting material. Is there an explanation that you can give as to why that's the stock that's used?
Yeah. A lot of times I'll make tongs out of sucker rod, which is 3/4 round. And when I tried to teach with it many years ago, people would get very confused on the initial thing of what a quarter turn was. So on the most simple level, it gave me a way of people to evaluate what a quarter turn was instantly. They also could determine where halfway through was more easily. It gave judgment to something that is, I always tell it's tong dyslexia when you're first learning. It's confusing enough what step you're at, let alone without some sort of a roadmap. So I use the common letter A that I've often seen people using as well, where one leg of the A is at 90 degrees, the other one's at 45, and we use that as a method of tracing our way around as we create the different offsets.
I see. Makes sense. I just got home, so I'm just going to hop back into the shop here. Is there anybody else got anything that they'd like to ask Shaun at all, or? Neighbor's got his leaf blower going out here.
I can't really see the questions that are going by at the bottom.
Hey, sorry about that, Shaun.
Handle stock. So I was just saying, I can't really see from the distance I am from the iPhone what the messages are at the bottom there. I can see Cindy said something.
Says, can't I see that either? I had to cut mine. I had to cut
Nice.
mine down for weight. Doesn't matter how long your handles are on your tongs. I had to cut mine down for weight. I like tongs.
I think it's perfectly valid to make the tong handles any length you want. Most of mine are 32 inches overall and cut in the middle. Sometimes I draw out the handles, sometimes I don't. But in my shop, I have some 8-inchers that I use for scroll jigs, and I have some that are much longer because they're much larger tongs, and I need the balance and the distance. Is that what you meant, Cindy? Oh, can't hear her. Okay. I think I saw somebody ask about starting stock for hammers. Most of mine starts as 2-inch round. Round's very easy to get in Alberta. The oil field industry has that in abundance. Not to mention our sponsor there, Jason at Thompson. I just bought 1,300 pounds of steel from him. It arrived on Tuesday, all shorts. And for me, that's ideal because I don't have to lift 200 pounds of steel to try and get it into the saw. So it's just a treat to get a whole big bin of 18 to 19-inch pieces of 2 1/4 inch or 2.5 inch 1045 and 4140. Not to mention the big bar S7 that I bought just so I can experiment with making some hammers. Body position when hammering. Yes, that's come up a lot in class. And what I'm trying to do is get everyone to work in the center of their body and the center of the anvil. Some people misconstrued that as saying that if you stand to the side of the anvil, that's inappropriate. All I mean is you still want to be in the center of it because we're uniting our shoulder over our elbow over our wrist and working in a reciprocal motion. When I did a piece for a video game company, I actually got to see what my arm did in slow motion. And I kind of always thought that's what it did, but it's essentially the pitman arm. The old arm on the locomotive or on the little giant hammer coming in, out, in, down, and around and out. I'm not saying there's not a lot of other ways to hammer. It's just after 30 years of hammering, it does not hurt me to do that. I try and use my hip joints to go left and right, use my knees to drop my weight. When I get everything right, I can hit with roughly 250 pounds of me.
Wow. What size of hammer are you using, Shaun?
This is a 3 1/4. And that's my favorite one for daily work. I brought a couple of rounding hammers, some Japanese bladesmith hammers, and a bunch of other ones just so everyone could try them out. But this is my one that I've been using for a couple of years now.
Is there something to be said about the rounding hammer versus the crosspeen?
I see a lot of people. I see a lot of people arguing about it, but all I've ever said to all students is any misshapen lump of metal on a stick that's doing the job you want is your blacksmith's hammer. When I was at one summer down at Fort Edmonton, I could tell where the tourists were from by what they were correcting as the proper hammer. Well, that and if they were wearing black socks and sandals, but you know. But so I like both hammers. I use both hammers, but most of the time, the very first one in my hand every day is the 3.25 pound crosspeen. I've witnessed the same thing, and we're all getting to the same point. And there's arguments about efficiency, but I think that has to do also with just what you're comfortable with.
What would you say is the better hammer for the beginner blacksmith? Do you think the rounding hammer is your best first purchase, or would you recommend the crosspeen?
So I generally also ask, are you an internet blacksmith? Have you taken the vast majority of your instruction from internet videos, or did you pick up some books like Randy McDaniel's The Blacksmith's Primer? Because then I have recommendations from there. Mine is still the crosspeen. It's my favorite for doing elongation and widening is very distinct steps. I think it takes more thought process, and it's a little further along the process to use a round surface on the edge of the anvil to achieve the look you're wanting. I believe they can see it more easily in an 18-hour class, basically, with the cross peen versus the rounding hammer. But I've had people make the exact same argument the other way.
What about the idea of having a cross peen hammer with a rounding face on the flat side of it?
I love it. I made one for myself right away. I got about the same radius on this hammer that I do on that, and the rounding side on it. It just doesn't get picked off the shelf as fast because I've got other methods within arm's reach that I can use. But I love bringing it to class for the 201 where we do doming of flowers and things like that, because they immediately see how we rib all of the veins down the leaves and then flip it over and immediately dome it on a wood block.
That was going to be another question I wanted to ask you, is through your classes, what kind of artistic things are you teaching people in your classes?
You know, that would have been a great thing for me to have brought over to the camera. So let me drag the camera over to it instead. On my business card, I have a piece that I made after the Walt Skadden class that occurred at the Western Element Museum. Very reminiscent of what he was doing. And I just loved the collars and joinery and things like that. So I based my workshop on it many years ago. And let's see here. So we're starting with some square upset corners and working into halfpenny scrolls, forging collars, doing a lot of riveting. We create all the rivets, and then we make a set of rivet snaps that people use to sit and dome the heads if they want. So this is my, oops. You can see I'm terribly sophisticated with these things.
In the club.
And after the Peter Brass-Pennick's workshop here, when we had Fireforge come in and do his hammer rack workshop, I started introducing elements of that too. So the students can now do some of the tenon and wedge joinery that he's famous for.
Nice.
They
yeah,
do
I love it.
That absolutely incredible, and a brilliant system too, because everyone can do it right away. So here's one of my sample pieces from that joint workshop.
Very nice.
And of course, I had to make 10 sets of tools for that workshop, so I'm down to about 6 of them now. People find them really attractive.
Ah.
I didn't sell them, by the way.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of guessing. Jeez.
This is one of the other pieces that we do. Then we collar it all into a square frame that we made.
Cool.
We also make the tools we use to cut out the flower petals. Let's see if there's any here. One of the fun things is the handled hot cut that we make. Every one of them tests it. And they test it with a 6-pound hammer into a block of mild steel and cut the mild steel. So the look on their faces never gets old for me as they realize they've made something that will cut cold, hard steel. And of course, we're cheating. We're using tool steel to do it. But
How you got to do it. So I got a question from Yon at Signe Rose Steel. He's got one of your rounding hammers that he bought from me a few years back. He's wondering, what type of wood do you use in your handles?
mostly hickory, but recently I got a really good plank of ash, so I'm cutting that one up right now.
Cool.
We have to go through, there's only really one wood supplier I know in Edmonton, that's Windsor Plywood.
Yeah.
And when we go there, I'm not good at picking out wood yet, so I waste a lot of it. I'm getting better. I'm learning what grain looks good and from the exterior of a 5/4 plank, and then cut them up. And I finally invested in a really good quality bandsaw, so I can do it a lot faster now.
Nice, yeah. I had somebody suggest to me trying to form them out on the lathe, that they thought that that would be faster, but I honestly believe that the bandsaw is the way to go when it comes to hammer handles, eh?
Well, a few years ago, I was at Home Hardware, and I was looking at the hammer handles, and they were gorgeous. The grain was going the right way, everything was right, and I was like, "What are these?" And then they said, "Oh yeah, we couldn't get our benchmark brand. We had to get these ones," and they were perfect. I was like, "Where do these come from? I don't want your other ones." They didn't have a slot cut in them. They didn't have any varnish on them. And they came from a guy in St. Thomas, Ontario, who was making them virtually by hand, or I think he had 6-position router that he was making them from. And since I've not been able to ever get a hold of them again. So I'm back to making them myself. But anyone who has the ability to have a pantograph with the router, there's a couple of guys here in Edmonton who make gun stocks, and they always say they might make me some, but they don't.
So I recently had some hammer handles that were given to me by an old blacksmith. He had them left over from before he retired. And a bunch of the handles were hex-shaped handles. And I came to really enjoy the shape of that with some of the handles that I was holding on to there. Have you ever played with the hex-shaped handle ever before?
Yeah, one of the ones I got early on from a farrier that came to visit me had a great flat sides with hex on the, so it was an elongated hex. And it was just lovely because it just rode in the hand with no grip required.
Yeah.
I tried putting those online and people told me they were wrong. And I decided to stop fighting it.
Yeah. No, that's exactly the scenario that I was expecting to hear from, is somebody who knows what they're doing, knows, and then you're going to get all the internet warriors that think they know what they don't know.
Yeah, and I only got so much time in the day to fight that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, and in the long run, you got to please the crowd when it comes to business, right?
Yeah. So what I really want them to have, if they can't have that, is a hammer handle that's egg-shaped. So on the peen side, it's got the rounded part of the egg, and on the bottom part, it's got the pointy part of the egg. So still not an aggressive thing, but it fits in the hand in the same shape that we do.
Interesting. Cool.
It also means that when it's in flight, when I'm working and I switch sides, I can tell which side's up without ever looking.
Very smart. Got a question from Cindy. She's wondering if you have a favorite steel that you like to work with.
Well, it actually came down to more the fact that it was available, and now I've developed a love for it. Yeah, 4140.
Really, eh?
Beautiful steel. We have more on the ground here than any other place in the world aside from Texas. So
Yeah.
Every oil field machine shop has offcuts of 4140. And luckily now with guys like our sponsor, he's willing to sell you a whole bunch in short lengths.
That's from Thompson Metals?
Yeah, and cheap too.
Nice. Is it used sucker rod or brand new, or?
It's not sucker rod. It's it's brand new virgin steel, just shorts.
Oh, wow. That's sweet.
Sucker rod. I actually have a chart of all the sucker rods because I make stuff for Weatherford artificial lift systems and for a couple other companies that make sucker rods. So I've actually finally been able to find out some are 4119, some are 4120, and then there's 1536 and a bunch of other interesting different metals depending on what job the sucker rod has to do.
Wow. That's really interesting to know. That's something I've never heard before. Thank you very much for sharing that.
I make the tools they use to feed the raw material to make it into either co-rod, the oval stuff, or actual sucker rod where they upset the ends on it.
Interesting. Well, I guess that goes just into show that much like the leaf spring, you can't really go and say it's 5160 because you really don't know what they're using, right?
Yeah, definitely. I was surprised when someone said, I was going through the Tom Clark videos from, he passed away a few years ago, but he was talking about using 6150, and I thought he was just intermixing the words, and no, sure enough, that's just a European designation, or I think it's just a European designation of a slightly different balance that they use for all their springs, but he uses it for all of his tapered wedges in the power hammer dies. And since I switched to that, I haven't any slippage in my, well, that and the shape of the power hammer dies, but I haven't any slippage in it.
Hey, did you ever get that big beast of a power hammer in the back of your shop going, or?
Every time I get enough money to cast the 9 cubic meters of concrete that go on the floor, something comes along and eats my money. So I have a 550-pound Anyang sitting in the back of the shop, and I'm really looking forward to getting it up and running. The dies are like 2 loaves of bread when they come together.
Yeah, I'm sure you're looking forward to it. I don't think your neighbors are, though.
Yeah, I'm out in the industrial park, and the funny thing is the tumbler bothers them more than the power hammers. But that one may be competitive.
Interesting. I actually just heard recently somebody talking about using a vibratory tumbler system versus a rotary tumbler system, and they found that the vibratory system worked much greater than the rotary, and it also reduced the amount of noise in their shop by going to a vibratory system.
I use a vibratory tumbler from all my brass for reloading, and yeah, it's a great system. But I haven't figured out how to build one. A lot of my pieces are 42 inches in length, so I'm still building a lot of railing pickets. And I have not figured out how to make one for that size. If I was just doing hammers and axes in it, I'm pretty sure that I'd do a double-walled vibratory tumbler, and then it wouldn't annoy the crap out of everyone.
Okay. What do you use for your medium in your tumblers?
I've tried a whole variety of different things, but I settled on the steel slugs from an iron worker.
Yeah.
They burnish the surface really nicely.
Cool. Hey, you order steel from all over the place. I know you had to source your 1045 from a supplier down in the States because of the size that you use. What places in Canada do you order your steel from?
So most all the steel comes through Earl Jorgensen. EMJ is their short name, Earl M. Jorgensen. And they order from all over the world. But the bizarre thing is when I try and go to the mill in Quebec where they produce the 1045, they are not interested in dealing with I don't think they're interested in dealing with a big supplier, let alone me who'd want a ton.
Huh. Okay. Well,
I get all the mill certs with all my stuff, so you get to see the origins of which mill made it. And I'm surprised how much we have in Canada still. I'm surprised and pleased, but the fact that our supply chain management system between the United States and Canada relied on free traffic across the borders led to no direct ability. My understanding is it led to no direct ability to buy from those mills within your own country without it having to go to Chicago, to Winnipeg, to Edmonton. And most of my stuff comes through Cincinnati. If I order on a Wednesday, it's here the next Wednesday on that truck.
wow. So weird, eh?
So, and I try and stay away from most of the knife steels because there's guys who will sell me 8 inches of whatever I need. And that's a handy thing to not have to invest in that much knife blade steel.
Do you have a preferred knife blade steel?
I bought as much W2 as I could. I've been fascinated my whole life with Japanese swords. 30 years ago when I got into blacksmithing, it's because I wanted to make Japanese swords. And I now know how that sounds when somebody comes to my door and say they want to make one. But 30 years in, I'm finally getting enough knowledge to make things that are vaguely recognizable as sword shapes.
Have you traveled to Japan at all for that?
No, I haven't. I was able to bring an American who trained in Japan and then a Japanese smith here to NAIT. And I can't wait till we do that again. I just published that yesterday on Instagram if anyone wants to see him and I working tamahagane together. That's the hand smelted steel that he brought with him.
Nice. That's so cool.
Oh, I know. It's just, I only had about 50 hours with him, and I was just like, oh, I can't wait till we do this again. And the next time we have him here, we'll be using the Japanese forge in the back corner there, and it'll be 8 students only and hands-on.
What is it that's so special about the Japanese forge?
I don't think it is. I think every culture had some form of double-acting bellows and charcoal in a pit somewhere. I think it's the fact that they keep it to this day almost every answer from him. So I asked what seems like a really simple question is, why do you forge with charcoal? I know that you can forge with propane. I know that you can forge with all mineral coals. And his answer really surprised me. It was, well, the charcoal maker wouldn't have work if I didn't use charcoal. So it's so inherent in their culture to be this cyclical arrangement that it doesn't even occur that you should change.
In a way that the world could be a better place, but who knows where we would be, right?
Yeah, and I do know there's lots of blades being made by other methods in Japan. We had Knifeware here at Edmonton. Kevin Kent's brought over the guys from Masakage Knives. So I drug my antique Fuigo, that's the bellows and the charcoal forge, out for them to work on. What was hysterical is they're modern smiths. They use mineral coal to do the forge welding of all their Japanese kitchen knives. And I showed them the forge, and they said, "Oh, that's beautiful. What are we using?" And I pointed to it again, and I assume they masked the incredulity on their faces, because they did use the antique Japanese forge to forge all their knives out in the parking lot on White Avenue in Edmonton.
Cool. So do you do live events like that every year, or how often do you do live events like that out on the streets and markets and stuff?
Usually about twice a year. For the last 15 years, I've done the one in February, which is just crazy to go outside. But last year I had the U of A metallurgical engineering students down, metallurgists down, watching me forge weld a bunch of chain at minus 27. So they wanted to see if there was any difference in how the structure of my forge welds changed from the year before, because I usually make them 3 links and then they go and destroy them up the hill at the U of A.
Oh, really? Good. Cool.
Oh, it's so neat. I met so many interesting people doing this. I got guys in the destructive testing lab who go, "Oh, we're doing this explosion welding. Do you want to come watch?" Yes, I do.
That's awesome. I think you had our good friend Mark Zerkowski come and swing the hammer with you last winter, if I'm not mistaken. Is that right?
He's got some stick, man. He really put it in there.
Oh yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
I've been in Regina with Dustin Smalls and Mark while Mark was doing some striking for Dustin, and oh boy, that guy's got some shoulder.
Those two guys together, that's quite a show.
Oh yeah. Oh man. Let alone the forging they do.
That too, yeah. So, yes, I can't keep up with that sense of humor. I'd be in trouble in no time.
Right? Oh, they're a hoot. I love them. Cool. So
yeah, I'm loving the work that he's doing with the wrought iron with the tool steel faces. I get a little jealous of the time. Not necessarily jealous of anything other than the fact that, oh, geez, I'd like to take a weekend off and make some of the wrought iron with tool steel faces. I've done it a few times, but I just can't fit it in anymore.
Well, it's a process to do that. I was talking to him about it, and it's not something that you just take on as a beginner smith. There's a lot to it, man, and you got to know what you're doing to come out with a quality product. That's for sure.
And he's doing a lot more prep of the wrought iron before he then takes it into a billet to then add the tool steel faces than most people do too. So it's been nice he's been publishing that along the way.
Yeah, no, he doesn't hold any secret backs. Dustin's very open if you ever want to talk blacksmithing. He's been a bit of a mentor to me here and there. You've helped me out quite a bit as well. I've asked you questions quite a bit. It's
cool.
It's the community that we have, though, right? I mean, as you can see through what we're doing right here, is the blacksmithing communities. That's just how we are. You don't find that in even the welding community. At one point, there was a community, but it kind of fell apart, and it is starting to slowly niche back together again. But this thing that we got going on with blacksmithing is rather amazing. Is there anything in Edmonton like what we're doing here in Manitoba?
I haven't been out to the Blacksmiths Guild in a while. They lost their domain name, so if anyone's looking for them, it's albertablacksmiths.ca now. But every once in a while, one of the guys will contact me and let me know what's going on. We built a shop out just south of Edmonton, 20 years ago, and it's got 4 forges, and it's a place where people can go to work. I believe they meet on the second Saturday of each month. So, but basically, I've just had my head down in my shop and going to work as much as I possibly can.
Now, you recently started supplying Canada with anvils. You've got forges that you sell. You've got swage blocks that you sell. These are items that people are regularly contacting me about, saying, hey, do you know where I can find an anvil? Hey, do you know where I can find a forge? Hey, do you know where I can find a swage block? You can't find swage blocks in Canada. You know where you find a swage block is you talk to yourself. If you want a good brand new swage block at a good price, what are they? They're like $600 or something?
Yeah, tax in 600.
Yeah. You can't
usually
go wrong
about 900. Pardon me?
You can't go wrong with that.
I don't think so, and it's mild steel. The anvils and the swage blocks came about from little things that occurred here, actually. Somebody took my antique swage block that I have back there and cut a bloody circle out on it with a cold chisel when I wasn't here. So to be able to repair a cast iron swage block's a heck of a deal. So I went and got that one copied in mild steel. So if anyone ever did that again, I just go over the MIG and fix it. Fortunately, no one's ever done it again, but I was just shocked to find out somebody would think that was a good idea. I forget that not everyone reveres tools.
I've seen some interesting things myself in my days in the shops, and guys that just, you got to shake your head some days because they don't care about the tools that they're working with if they don't own the tools themselves.
Yeah, there's been a few times when people have said, is this worthwhile for me to buy from you? And I said, are you going to be the only one using it? If that's the case, then yes. If you're going to share it amongst people, no.
Now you've got a 100-pound anvil that you're producing as well. Is it, it's fully cast steel, if I'm not mistaken?
Yep. And induction hardened face, the horn and the step are soft. That's a good thing to bring up here. These are cheap and cheerful anvils. My idea behind this was I used to get people all the time coming into my shop or in classes saying, I can't find a decent anvil anywhere. How about you sell me yours? And I'm like, no, I'm using it. And then they say, what about all these ones under the stairs? And I said, don't look under the stairs. And then I'd point them at Mark Zerkowski and say, hey, look at him. He's got a lot of anvils over there.
He's got a whole barn full.
So my idea was to get these things made with a good face and adequate everything else. What I wanted was square, flat, hardened face. And they come in at 55 to 56 Rockwell. But the rest, I've been trying to tell people. I had a millwright phone me, and he wanted to know all the details of the anvil. So I shot a video, and I said, well, see, the tail isn't perfectly square, and the transition from the step into the horn, this side's bigger than that side. But the face, and I put my machinist square onto the face, you can see it almost suctions onto the face. That's flat. That's important to me.
Yeah.
Another customer who wasn't happy with them put the square over the side of the anvil, and of course, it's not perfectly square all the way down to its foot. He put the square here, and I was a little confounded. I sent him a new anvil because I couldn't figure out. That doesn't matter to me at all. So I'm always endeavoring to try and figure out a best way to describe the things. If I got them made in Calgary down at the Foothills Foundry there, they'd be $1,500 cost each.
Ouch.
Yeah, and there's no room on that to retail them. So trying to find a cheap and cheerful one that meets all the standards was my goal. The only disadvantage that came to be is everyone expected them to be exactly like my hammers. And I hadn't really thought of that. My goal was to get people working. Every day there's a whole bunch of $1,000 beat up antique anvils on Kijiji or on Craigslist here in Edmonton. And my goal was to give them something that was way better than that.
Well, I personally think you've achieved it. I highly recommend your anvils to anybody that's looking for an anvil. And I'm not too sure if, Cindy, is your contest still open for that? Can people still apply it? If you go to Pritchell and Hardy and you sign up for their newsletter, it puts you into the contest to win one of your 100-pound anvils.
Now I'm working on them as hard as I can to get the next batch up and ready to go. They caught me off guard a little. Cindy sold one the other day and told me, and it's like, it'll be a couple days.
Yes, the contest, the draw is going to be December 1st for the anvil.
Give Cindy a little bit of a plug right now. She's a sponsor of ours, Pritchell and Hardy, sponsoring the event here. They've got a small prize package available for us, or a decent sized prize package, I should say. There's a 2x72 belt sanding package in there. There's powdered steel, and there's a little bit of swag, some hats in there too as well. Thank you very much, Cindy, again for hooking us up with all of that. If you go to Pritchell and Hardy's website right now, they have a deal on Quenchant that is absolutely amazing. You can save 25% right now using the code, what is it, Quench25? There you go, Quench25 at checkout, and you'll save yourself 25% on Quenchant. They've got Parks 50, they got AAA. I just ordered myself 5 gallons of each. Cindy was on the spot right away, making sure she got the shipping details down, and that stuff's on its way. I can't wait to get to use it.
I have some of Cindy's metal powder and some of the VSM belts that I'm running through right now, and I'm really looking forward to getting some canister Damascus made with that.
Cool. Speaking of Quenchant, do you use any specific style of Quenchant, Shaun?
Yeah, I stock that on my website too. It's Houghton Type K, which is the equivalent of Parks 50.
Okay, cool. That's right. Actually, I forgot we spoke about the Houghton before back a while ago. I was looking for the reason I've gone with Cindy's here is she's got the sale going on right now, so you can't beat that sale. So
she's also got the shipping containers and all that stuff down pat. For me, every time I'm finding it's an adventure in shipping. All shipping's adventurous, but I'm really interested in people who want to come by and pick it up right now until I invest in containers. The containers to put it in don't come in small quantities, or they're very exorbitantly priced. They add, $10 to an order, which most people will find is a borderline.
Interesting. Yeah, well, and you're open to having people come down to your shop and check things out, say hi. You've got your gallery at your shop upstairs that you sell stuff out of, but you
just wish people would make an appointment so I know they're coming.
Right.
With the old COVID mask here, I can at least keep the look off my face when they walk in, interrupting me in the middle of a heat treatment or something like that. But if people tell me they're coming, I can block the time in my calendar. But I have not had much luck communicating that, please let me know you're coming. And if you do come and I don't know you're there, do not sneak up behind me while I'm focused.
Sure.
One of us is going to have a heart attack. I'm not sure who.
So you're using the Howdens within your shop personally yourself, right?
Yes, I really like it.
Do you preheat your oil at all prior to quenching, or?
Yeah, I had a really neat polymer oil from Dennis Paish down in Calgary. If you guys haven't heard of him, he's a bladesmith with a nice YouTube channel of his Orange Crush press. But he gave me this polymer oil that I just absolutely loved. It's totally unavailable now, so I've now switched to Houghton Type K, and it goes to 120 degrees Fahrenheit. I'm pretty sure you're not supposed to use the immersion bucket heaters in oil, but I've had pretty good luck with it. I saw Rick Marchand down in Nova Scotia last year using a similar immersion heater to bring his oil up to temperature. It's much better than taking a bar of steel and heating up the oil that way, which reduces its viscosity in the long run. So
Right.
I'm experimenting with that right now. I used to just have a hot plate underneath it.
And is there a reason that you're not using the hot plate anymore?
Yeah, drips and smoke. And I'm trying to find a way to not have any of the smoke from any of those quenching processes exceed the ventilation hood.
Right. What do you use for ventilation in your shop?
Very similar to here at NAIT, they have these simple sheet metal ones. I think you can see them in the background. But theirs are hooked to a massive, really expensive system that does all the air makeup. Mine are passive because I have a 12-inch diameter chimney above them.
Ah, so it's like a draft hood then.
Yeah, it'll suck the tongs off the rack when it's minus 30, so I had to put a baffle into when I'm not using it.
Crazy. Wow. That's pretty cool. And you're running propane in your shop or charcoal? I know you've got both, but which do you prefer?
I love coal, but I can't do production work with it like I'd like. If I have to get an opportunity, a couple of years ago I was at Saskatoon doing repoussé pieces over top of wrought iron work, and that's the ideal situation when I want to use coal. But for all the hammers and things like that, I can load 40 pounds of 4140 into the gas forge and just go as fast as I can onto the power hammer.
Your hammers are 4140 or 1045. What do you strictly use on your hammers?
Mostly 4140. When I get into the until when I got into the 8 pounds and up, so the largest I've made is a 14 pounder, and then 6s and 8s. That was getting too much for the oil volume I have. I now have a 45-gallon drum of Houghton Type K, so I could do the large volume or the large size hammers now. But up to that point, I'd switch to 1045 for all those.
And what do you use for your tempering process? Is it just a normal oven, or do you have yourself something like a Even Heat or a Paragon?
I am really lucky. A good friend of mine does certification of analytical equipment and gave me an antique gas chromatograph. And of course, it's used for analysis of all different things, but the part that's precision about it is its oven. So I'm able to do anything up to 12 by 12 by 6 in that. And then I have a large Paragon oven that will do any of the other stuff. I just like the electrical efficiency of the gas chromatograph versus the Paragon.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, I've got a little mad scientist lab going in the shop. I've got my microscope and my Rockwell tester and a bunch of other things I've always wanted to have and occasionally get a chance to use now.
Looks like there's a couple questions that I missed out on here that I should bring up. Let's see, when I upgrade from my Princess Auto Special, I'll be buying one from Shaun. That's from Michael. Shaun makes
I never want to shoot myself in the foot for those, but those Kanka anvils that Princess Auto brought in should be really good. I've never got my hands on one in person. The other ones, they're okay. We get about a 70% rebound when the students bring them into classroom here and we can check them. But the Kanka drop forged ones should be really good. I'm really tempted to buy one for myself.
I went down to Princess Auto and I tested out a couple of some ball bearings just to see what kind of rebound they have. They definitely have an excellent rebound on them. They're a well-made anvil. They've got a really nice shape to them, but the price tag on them to me is a little steep. But that's just me. That
was one of the reasons I wasn't really worried with the anvils that I have. I wanted them to be economical so people could get them. Truth be known, the profit margin is actually kind of poor on them, but it doesn't really matter as long as they are a good product that meets the standards of a square flat face and a good resilient surface.
Well, I think it's an excellent product, and I'm actually surprised that Princess Auto decided to go through with carrying Kanka product like they have versus not supplying something, because Princess Auto is very well known for their price point. That's why people shop at Princess Auto. They don't go to Princess Auto because they want to buy a Mercedes Benz. They go to Princess Auto because they want to buy their Ford F-150 that is a workhorse. And I believe that's what you're producing when it comes to an anvil. Is you're producing the Ford F-150 that gets what? You know what? I shouldn't be saying a Ford. I'm a Dodge guy. You're building the Dodge Ram there, buddy. You don't dodge it, you ram it.
Yeah, and my rusty old Ford's still going, 18 years later. So I am pleased. I am thrilled to see that Lauren Backer's Mighty Forge is the one they picked, though. They're doing a Canadian product. I'm absolutely thrilled to see that.
Yes, me too. And we've actually got Lauren coming up next, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. But before we move on to Lauren, I got a couple more questions for you. Somebody bought their forge from you, David Bonin from Snow Dog Jewelry. He wants to know if he ever has to replace the burners, can that be done?
Yeah, it really depends on the sophistication of the customer. Ultimately, all they do is throw them in a pizza box and mail them back to me, and I'll rebuild them for them. Or if they have the ability, they can extend them. But there's 2 inches of wear that can occur on them before it starts to affect the circuit. So the gas-air mixture circuit. So all they do is stick the side on it and move them in.
Good to know. Got a shout out from Yon. Thank you so much, Shaun. Your hammer is my workhorse. You rock, mate.
Awesome.
What about using a magnetic engine block heater to heat your oil? I would guess there. That's not a bad idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I think every magnet in my shop is a dangerous sea urchin of spines. So I do try and limit how many of them I have, or I've tried keeping them in plastic containers so they can shed, or I can use the on-off magnets. But I'm still getting steel splinters when I go to them. So
oh, yeah.
I think it's a really good idea, but I'm going to avoid it still. Looks like we got about 4 minutes left, and all the students are clustering around. They still seem to be happy, although the masks are on, so I can't quite tell.
Yeah, pretty much. We just got a bunch of people saying that they love what you're doing for us, Shaun, and thank you very much for everything. Your presentation was absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much for that. Thank you to NAIT for allowing you the time to do this. And
they set up a Wi-Fi hotspot in here for us for this occasion. So I was thrilled with that because I really wasn't sure, because nothing penetrates in here otherwise.
Good. Well, unless you're doing maybe some MIG welding, then you get some penetration there, right?
Exactly.
All right. Thank you again, Shaun. You take care.
Thank you.
I love you.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much.